What is going on, everyone? AP over here, Rum Pure Sports, bringing to you once again. We have the Lineup Builder Show with our partner SaberSim. I'm here with my guy Rubio Dimes. Rubio, what's going on, my man? How are you doing on this fine Thursday, which we thought was Wednesday, but
yes.
we're on to Thursday.
Thursday, the playoff baseball games have me in a little bit of a bind. I thought it was for sure Wednesday, and all of a sudden, I was preparing for baseball tonight and stuff, and then I realized, oh wait, no, it's a football Thursday, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I do know that the WNBA also plays a playoff game. That's going to be fun too. That's exactly why I thought it was Wednesday. I
had no idea that the WNBA was still going.
They wouldn't go against football and stuff too. I don't know
who's even in it. I could not tell you who's like. Caitlin Clark's not. I know that.
Yeah, exactly. That's all that matters from us. But it is funny. But I am looking forward to this one. I did look at the slate yesterday, just in preparation of this week, and it feels like 49ers slates have been just like, what is this, the third 49ers slate that we've had on the Showdown show? So it's going to be pretty interesting. I do like the Seahawks too. Like, I don't know. I'm looking forward to the way this one sets up. Devo obviously having a huge history of just crushing the Seahawks too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one, AP.
I think this one is really interesting, and for a few reasons. I brought this up kind of late on Monday when I was digesting stuff, looking at information. Everyone was talking about the Chiefs and their injury issues, like, because it's skill position players, the positions that we all care about. No one was talking about the Saints side and how they literally like signed a guy off the street 3 days ago at center, and you're going against one of the best D lines in the NFL, and they just so many core defensive players that were out in that game. And look, Derek Carr had no time, ended up getting hurt late in that game, but he had no time, absolutely no time. One lucky bomb. Shaheed is like an absolute machine. He's on another level. Absolutely fooled the Chiefs safety there for that long bomb. But I feel like we nailed that script. And what I'm getting at, Rubio, is we have another really interesting situation in this one. Both teams with a lot of injury pieces, kind of in the trenches and on defense. In the Seahawks, this is their third game in 11 days. You just see these teams on short rest. We saw it the Thursday night game. It was the Kirk Cousins game where he absolutely nuked. We were on the overscript on that game, and we just felt that defensively, less time to prep. It was a spot where both teams would kind of air it out. So on the surface right now, when you look at the 49ers, Moody out, the linebacker situation, very, very, very thin. Fred Warner should play, but he hasn't looked that good since coming back from his injury. Hufanga, I can't remember their safety. I don't want to try to pronounce his name. I'll absolutely butcher it. He's out. And then on the Seahawks side too, I mean, you're talking, one of their D tackles is still out. Highly drafted guy. A lot of issues. One of their top cornerbacks also out. Derek Hall, their linebacker, who is a stud. He got hurt, but he's a full participant in practice on Wednesday. So again, short week, a lot of games in a very, very tight window. You just wonder, how are these guys going to look? What's their duration going to look like? Like the backups coming in, are these guys going to get absolutely schooled? And I think when you think about these two teams offensively, we know what they want to do. Their offenses are pretty much intact. You got to love how the Hawks are just airing it out right now, passing a 70% rate, rushing at a 30% rate. And you got to think that the 49ers are going to get back to the run in this game. Anyways, I think we see a lot of offense. I love how this sets up for Showdown. And I think it's going to be a fun one to break down with you today, Rubio. But let's get to the base build. We got the base build run right now. We're using average projections. We're sorting by highest projected score. We got SaberSim up. Brock Purdy, Geno, Jordan Mason, the top three right now. What do you see in here? What do you like? What do you dislike?
Yeah, what I dislike off the rip is immediately like Charbonnet in there and stuff at 3,400 because I don't know what the cheap options really entail, right? Like I want to see what we have down there. And Noah Fant also populates where this 3K range where I considered that a dead range when I was looking at the slate. I'm like, man, I really don't want to land in that like 3K range where I just don't have a lot of options. Jawan Jennings you can throw into that mix too, where these guys don't really have a stout projection, but you're kind of ending up with them. But I am very surprised, though, AP, by the 4-2 Seahawks. And I guess it just has to do with pricing. Jordan Mason, as much as I've been playing him this year and stuff, we just really don't have a huge performance. Like, right? Like, I think outside of week one, he really hasn't, balled out. And he's over 10K, too. It makes you just wonder. Like, I know that when you look at the Seahawks, they've been passing the ball a lot. When you look at the 49ers, their running defense, their rush defense is one of the better ones in the league. If you go back to last year, this year, not so much. But it does make you think like, man, you could jam in 3 Seahawks, with Geno Smith, then 2 pass catchers. It almost creates just a natural run back with like the 49ers. And that's why Purdy captain. I don't know if I'm going to do that tonight, but it is interesting. Like maybe a 3-3, despite the Seahawks being, dogs. Like, yeah, I could see a 3-3 or a 4-2 Seahawks like this is pushing a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. So just kind of a couple baseline stats too to add on to what you said. Geno Smith absolutely airing it out, averaging an NFL high currently 293 yards per game. Really, really impressive. Brock Purdy not far behind him, 275 yards a game. That's first and fifth in the NFL right now as far as passing goes. The 49ers allowing a pretty solid 299 yards through the air. Seahawks 206 yards through the air. You've actually been able to rush on these two teams. This is why on that 2-game Monday slate, I played both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs against them, something that we talked about getting kind of unique. It was the right move, except for Kenny Walker absolutely dusted me with all of the work that he got. And I was so tilted by that because I did not play 3 running backs in the same game. I played both Detroit running backs, both scored a touchdown, both did enough, hit the projection upside that I wanted. And so that was definitely very tilting. But I think it's like when you think about the 49ers, Jordan Mason has had the opportunity to get there. It was 2 games ago where, man, he should have absolutely like broke the slate. I can't recall exactly what happened, but just kind of going back through doing my research and looking at things. I mean, man, the opportunity was there. I will say, when you think of Christian McCaffrey, he just brought so much more out of the backfield that makes it like that. I think teams, it's a lot easier to contain Jordan Mason than CMC with what they can do with CMC out of the backfield. That's just so hard to kind of replicate. I will say Jordan Mason's a beast, and he's a really, really good rusher. He just needs that opportunity. I think that opportunity will be here because the path for the 49ers to win, they got to establish it, get the play action going, which I think bodes really well for Jordan Mason and Brandon Ayuk, who we're going to talk about, who looked really good last week against the Cardinals, which I think is an interesting route. The other thing, Rubio, too, is the lead. If you take out the week where John Jennings went off. Actually, no, you even add that weekend. George Kittle is tied for first with Jennings with the most touchdown receptions on his team. 0 TD receptions, I believe, for Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. So that was another interesting stat that I pulled. But what I'm seeing here is, man, quarterbacks in the captain, dominating the way, where it feels like we're going to get a skill position player. So that will be something that we, kind of adjust or talk about when we build out our script. And then let me just switch to the flex real quick just to see what we're getting. No receivers on when we think about captains. Did we get any receivers on the Seahawks side? Tyler Lockett, the only one.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of concerned because we know that the Seahawks want to air it out. Division rivalry. Here's the other thing, too, before we get into our script, and add any other comments, too, on just what you're seeing in the flex spot. Do you think we see points, 3 games in 11 days, a lot of injuries on both sides, both defensive sides here? Do you think we see points, or is it just does it end up being like a really nasty type of game between two division rivals?
Yeah, the two division rivals thing is always like a little bit of a factor, right? Like these teams know each other so well, but I do tend to lean that we'll see some points. You mentioned the injuries earlier too. I mean, this can only help the upside in this game in terms of offensive output. I really like targeting Deebo Samuel in this spot, who we don't see any in this first run, right? Like Deebo, I think what was it last Thanksgiving? Didn't they go against each other on like that Thanksgiving slate?
Yep.
Last year, when I think it was Deebo who really ended up cooking. There's still like a lot of guys who I think have a ton of upside in this game who we're probably not getting right now. And I'm kind of curious to see what the Sims say and what we kind of come up with here in a little bit. Yeah, I think if you look back at last year on Christmas or Thanksgiving Day, Deebo had a huge day against the Seahawks, like 7 for 79, also had a rushing touchdown. But like he can just kind of just be effective in a spot where I think the Seahawks still play a decent amount of zone. I know Pete Carroll isn't there anymore, so relying on like last year's data and stuff is a little bit shaky. But those are the type of guys that I want. Like Juwan Jennings, he made an amazing play last week too. It's just kind of crazy. But like you got these guys populated: Fant 3K, Jennings 4K, Charbonnet 3.4K. Like there isn't a ton of value, and I wonder if we get into these like 1,000, 2,000 guys, if there's anyone that kind of sticks out. AP, and it doesn't look like it. Like Kenny McIntosh is populating a little bit, which is just I don't know. I don't love that, but I think overall. We'll see what we come up with. But I do think a double quarterback slate with both guys priced below 10K is also very noteworthy. Last week, felt like we had 11K quarterbacks, right? Like we had 10.8K, we had like 9.6K was the cheapest, and both these guys come in under that.
So what about, all right, so I like what Snyder's saying about Isaac Garindo, I believe is his name, backup running back. He's Louisville guy. When you look at, so I was looking up snap counts from last week too. Jordan Mason, a slight dip, 64%, maybe with, I think he has 2 fumbles now in the season. And then we saw Garindo play 14% of the snaps, get a little bit more run there. So that could be an interesting. I like this take from Snyder. I definitely do. Maybe Kyle Shanahan maybe switches things up just a little bit. Really, really interesting note there from our guy Snyder. I'm with you though. Like I feel like they need to establish it, get it going, open up the play action, especially against kind of a hobbled Seahawks defense, secondary line, like their linebacker situation, very, very, very thin. So that's just why I think we see points, and like 49.5 total between these two teams feels too high. And Vegas knows that the public loves overs. And when you think about this game, I think if you go back and you like looked at the total between two division rivals, 49ers, Seahawks, I would like 46.5, 47. It feels like Vegas is like playing it safe with that 49.5 total. So that leads me to believe that maybe, just maybe, we see some points here. Let's get to the script though. I'm gonna get back to this screen. All right. I know hosting, it's always tougher because we're zoomed in and it's a little bit more difficult to see on my end, but hopefully everyone else can see this just fine. Let's go to the flex. Let's go like that. Let's bring up quarterbacks first. All right, let's talk through this. Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, both, as we mentioned, absolutely airing it out. We're not getting the touchdowns on the 49ers side, though. We need to see that. And then it was against the Lions a couple weeks ago where I really felt like the Seahawks got vultured. Two times a wide receiver went out at the 1 yard line just so that they could hand it off to Kenny Walker to get that 1 yard touchdown rush. So like I feel like the touchdowns through the air, through the passing game is going to be there for Geno and this offense. I mean, they're throwing it at a 70% clip, highest in the NFL, one of the highest in the NFL. What do you want to do with the projections here between these? Yeah,
two? Real quick, can you hit that filters button at the top there real fast?
Oh, it's tilting you, right?
Yeah, it always does. And you can, just perfect. It always just eliminates the noise for me, especially when we get into like the 200 players later on, where that could be a factor. Jake Bobo could be a guy that we talked about later on.
Where do I go?
Again, and then hit that little tab at the bottom if you scroll down.
There we go.
Perfect.
It's a new system over here. Still getting used to it.
Admittedly, haven't watched a ton of Seahawks games, but we did see the one on like primetime football against the Lions, right? And what Jared Goff didn't have an incomplete pass. Like I think that was the main thing. I think he went 18 for 18. There's just a lot to kind of be bullish on with this pricing, right? We talked about how quarterback pricing the first 3-4 weeks of the season was too cheap, or 3 weeks, I should say. And then the last week, I think over the last 2 weeks, they kind of like, oh, hey, we're going to up those prices on those quarterbacks. Like, right, they're going to be like around 10.8K for a couple of guys and stuff. And then these guys both clock in super cheap. And this is a good point. Yeah, Lee Price, like when you mention it too, like everyone is too cheap on this. Like, yeah, absolutely. I think I just think that, yeah, you want to be able to be bullish on both quarterbacks. I do think that you can throw it against the Seahawks team. I just think the Seahawks defense overall is not really great. But you look at the 49ers side of the ball too, like they're a little bit banged up. You know what the Seahawks are going to do. They're going to throw the ball at a very high clip. Fine on both these quarterbacks, AP. I don't see a reason to really not to. But I do think if you did want to leverage the rush game, you'll have that opportunity. But for me, like if they're both going to be a combined, what is that, 18-6, I'm buying all day.
So Deegs, always appreciate your comments, man. Really do. So the case that I was making at the start of the show is both teams are hobbled right now defensively. You have a very, very thin linebacker core on the 49ers side right now. You have what I think is maybe a Fred Warner that's not 100%. At least what I've seen hasn't looked like 100%, especially going back to last week against the Cardinals, a game that they should not have lost. So there's obviously some issues going on, and their key safety also out. So it is an asterisk for sure. I agree with you, but I mean, in this situation, it might be somewhat similar. Maybe it's negated a little bit with the fact that they're playing 3 games in 11 days. That's very, very difficult to do, to flip these games, in such a short manner. So definitely a good mention, though. What were you saying?
Just buying
you like, all right.
Yeah.
So I bumped them up. So you're kind of in with me on this overscript, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I mean, I just think that when you watch these teams, like even the 49ers last week, that defense kind of crumbled a little under pressure too. I mean, I thought for sure they had that game against Arizona. And really just in that second half, they let Kyler Murray just run down the field a little bit. And even in the first drive of the game and then stuff, this 49ers defense definitely doesn't seem as just vicious as they were. I'm trying to get up a couple of things too, just like on these rankings that they have pass protection wise. Like, yeah, it looks like both teams very solid too. And I'm just trying to see it defensively where the dip in this 49ers defense is. Once I find that, I'll share it.
But so I've started. I feel like, and this is not a knock on anything at all. Like these tools have made the field a lot better. SaberSim, our partner, I think by far has the best simulation tool out there. And obviously why we're partnered with them. Projections, massive, like absolutely game-changing. What's lacking, though, is I think we're all just, or not, I'm not going to say we're all, but I think a large part of the community is just looking at projections, simulating things out, and running with it. When you got to, look under the hood, too, and look at some of the things that matter, like the things in the trenches. And we saw it last week. I'll continue to bring that up. And I think we're going to see it this week with the rest, with the injuries on both sides defensively. It's just going to play such a massive role. Now we still got to figure out the projections. We got to figure out how each team, or try to predict and project what each team is going to do. That's very, very difficult. And that's where, obviously simulating this out and diversifying using some of the tools here with SaberSim is just going to give you a nice edge for sure. I love the overscript, though. We're going to go with that. What I did here is Purdy and Geno, I brought them very, very close together. And the other thing, Rubio's like these prices. And Mahomes, I'll bring that up. He was 11,000. And Mahomes hasn't done anything this year. He hasn't done shit at all, fantasy-wise. And so it's like we are getting a massive – like Mahomes ranks in pass yards per game like 22nd. I was looking this up. These two are both in the top 5. So we obviously have value, and both of these are probably going to be captain viable at the end of the day. Let's move on to the running back spot. We got Mason, top projected. Kenny Walker, That's going to be an interesting discussion because Kenny Walker's looked incredible, and you've actually been able to run a little bit on this 49ers team. Kyron Williams had a monster day, and I was impressed by Gibson, Hall, and Connor all had decent games against them as well. And then the Seahawks too. You've been able to run. Who's Tracy? That rookie that I should have been much higher on last week. I'm such a donkey that I wasn't. He gashed them, man. He got whatever he wanted on the ground against them. So what are we doing with the running backs?
I mean, you mentioned it too. I mean, the first thing that we were kind of talking about when you brought it up was just Tyron Tracy ended up having, what was it, just over 100 yards on the ground. And it looked like every time he got the ball, it was like 12, 14, 15 yards. You look at the Seahawks game against the Lions, too. First drive or second drive, it just felt like David Montgomery, 10 yards, 20-yard chunk, 5 yards, and then touchdown. There is a lot to like about Jordan Mason. But how many times can I like Jordan Mason before I take my hand off the stove, AP? That's my concern. That's the last time I'm buying in on him. I might not have many times to do that if Christian McCaffrey's going to be coming back within hopefully the next month. But really, like, my hand is kind of getting burned on the stove right now, but I'm going to keep it on there. It's just a rush defense that has been gettable. And you look at it on both sides, like both running backs for the Giants ended up kind of getting there. I mean, on the first drive alone, I think Eric Gray had 3 catches for 50 yards. Like, you could make a case. I don't love it, from a single entry perspective, but like you can absolutely play both running backs, and there's a reason why. Garendo, if you're looking at just snaps wise, how many snaps did Garendo get last week, AP?
What I say, 8% or something, or no, 12%?
12%, and you said Mason got 30.
No, 14%. 14%.
14. We are already on the record saying, like, look, that 3K range, 4K range is awful. Like, I don't like Charbonnet, and Charbonnet's going to have way more of a role than Garendo, don't get me wrong. But there's a chance if Garendo got 6-7 touches, he could be very much optimal. Kenneth Walker's the clear alpha. I don't know, AP. Like, when I looked at Kenneth Walker coming into the year, I was very high, but I didn't expect this. Like, he is very much being used at a very high clip in the passing game, especially. What was it? 7 catches last week? Is that what he had for 47 yards?
He looked incredible, man.
And so this is like another thing too, where they mentioned about using him in the passing game. And sometimes you don't really care what coach says, right? Like, coaches can say a whole lot of things and stuff. But they're backing it up with Kenneth Walker. They said he'd be like the guy coming into the year. They said he'd be effective in the passing game. And he's done that and then some. I just really want to keep buying in on him. I don't really want to keep buying in on Charbonnet. I think that's perfect what you have right now. I do think Kenny should be slightly ahead of Mason despite the matchup.
Yeah,
it's just the involvement in the passing game for Kenneth Walker in a trailing script could be 4 or 5 catches. I mean, it's high on the higher side. His props are going to be probably 2.5 or 3. But he's almost like an Alvin Kamara light in terms of how he's being used. Like, in a trail script last game, you still saw that floor against the Lions. One of his big plays was through the air, which I think he ended up having to rush that one, and I think got to the 1-yard line. He scored that one. But really, like, the role with Kenny Walker right now is just incredible.
I agree, and I just thinking back to that Lions game. It's so hard to run on the Lions. Like, they're like we'll talk about all season. I think they have Kansas City. I think maybe the one team in the league that's better against running backs right now. Like, they are an absolute juggernaut against running backs, and we saw it against Alvin Kamara. How many more times do I need to bring that up again? Do you remember our battle that we had? My one battle that I won against Rubio Dimes was the Alvin Kamara.
It was a really good call by you, and I also I told you, I texted my friend, I said, I gotta be looking for AP at the top of the leaderboard. It's just Juju just went too good.
I did not have Juju. I felt like such a donkey
because you had everything else.
I had like 10% Juju, and it was just in the flex. And I was absolutely
7 for 130 a game. That is just absurd.
A couple broken plays. Mahomes just like absolutely. I mean, the defense probably wasn't even expecting that from Juju. But I think we got this nailed here. We moved Kenny Walker above Jordan Mason. With that in mind, maybe with knowing that CMC is going to be coming back, maybe it's more of a split. I'm not going to say split, but maybe we see more Isaac there. as well. So we bumped him up. We bumped Mason down a little bit. And Charbonnet, I'm with you. Like, it's just we want more Kenny. We can't fully get rid of Charbonnet because he's getting, 5 targets. Last 2 games, 5 targets. It's a lot for a running back. And with how often they're throwing it, those are valuable targets. So, all right, I like this. Let's go to wide receivers and tight ends. So this is going to be interesting because we don't have a clear standout. When we do this each and every week, there's always that alpha and one with like that 16, 17, 18 sometimes point projection. We don't really see that here. It kind of just spreads out. What are you seeing at the receiver and tight end spot?
So I think like the first thing that you see here is, Ayuk being the top dog after one good game is, okay. But I think I'd still rather have Debo over Ayuk. They're going to kind of be in the same price zone. Ownership's going to be very much split almost evenly. But
do you think Debo is 100%? Like, that's the one thing I worry about. Like, he just hasn't looked. And this is just kind of an eye test, and I would love others' opinions on this because it's like maybe I saw certain clips that made me think this way, and maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture. But he just hasn't looked to me like the 100% the Debo that we're used to seeing, just like the guy that can absolutely run through a brick wall. So, do you have a thought on that? Or?
What was the injury that he had coming in? Like, I remember because he missed the game and stuff. What was it again?
Chat can help us out with this. I know, Deegs has to know. Deegs knows.
I'll take your word for it. All right. So if the eye test is telling you with Debo, I think the eye test over everything. The thing is, like, when you just look at recent history, right? And this is the same thing. I don't want to just look what he's done against the Seahawks. Completely different coaching staff. Like, this is a team that has been very gettable. And Debo does love to go against the Seahawks. But when you also look at it, too, you look at guys who kind of perform from the slot area, what they're able to do. Not that Debo just exclusively runs from the slot. But you had Wandale 6 catches last week. You also had Darius Slayton just go off. Like, this secondary is gettable as well. As much as we were talking about how they're exploitable in the run game a little bit, you also look at what they were able to do against the Lions. Like, there is big plays to be had. I think Debo can be kind of like that guy. I say if you think he's not looking 100% healthy right now, I'm willing to kind of.
What I'm saying is Brandon Ayuk looked freaking electric last week. Like, he looked really good. Like a completely different guy than what we saw in weeks 1 through 4. He looked like a completely different guy.
Jameson Williams had a huge play, 2 for 80 and a touchdown. Darius Slayton, 8 for 122. That kind of more profiles toward Ayuk, too. So I'll lean. Okay, you swayed me. Ayuk over Devo. Let's do it. We're going to get 100% Ayuk now.
And look at the salary. So this is a really good point, and it's going to make – I think there might be extra work that we have to do on the slate. You can't just run it, set it, and feel good about it, because look at pricing. Everyone feels too cheap. All of these guys feel way too cheap. I really feel like what's going to happen, even especially if we get a lot of points. I mean, kickers and defenses. I haven't even looked at kicker pricing yet. But if they're in the 5Ks, I don't know how I play a kicker on the slate, especially with the target tree. The volume, unless you get that rare 350-yard field goal type of game, then I'm going to be dust. But that's going to be a really, really interesting point. So you think, is this too high for Brandon Ayuk? Because remember, our quarterbacks we have at 20. I feel like our quarterbacks
Ayuk is that's true. The top dog. That's fine. Let's be overly aggressive. We're having an overscript. Let's be overly aggressive. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and see what these other guys do. I think I want to look at the snaps real quick on Seattle. I needed to get. I should probably
let me bring up just Seattle.
So I got that up right now too. So I'm going to go to 2024, and we're just going to go to Week 4, the most recent game. It was a trail script. If you think the Seahawks are going to be trailing a little bit, I want AJ Barner up. So AJ Barner was a factor against the Lions. He also had 2 targets last week. He also scored a touchdown last week against or 2 weeks ago against the Lions. I also want Jake Bobo up to 2.3, just under Barner. He ran 7 less routes than Barner, but he also had 3 targets. And what did you notice against the Lions too? Bobo's name kept popping up. Since they throw the ball so much, it leads to these paths where you have a 1,600 Barner, you have a 1,000 Bobo. I've already seen a 3K, a 3.4K, 4K guys who I don't really love populating in these teams. And I think that maybe if we open the door to these 1K guys, you might have a little bit better of a chance. Last week, yeah, it's your typical guys at the top. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Metcalf, Lockett, Fant, those guys are running the majority of the routes. I think that when you look at it too, the 49ers were beat a little bit all over the place, but more exclusively, like it was just the outside guys. Like, you know, Michael Wilson was able to kind of exploit them 5 for like 78 or whatever. You also have like the Patriots side of the ball. I don't know.
I think Wilson could have had a bigger game too. I'm just trying to remember back to that one. Like I feel like there was
bullish on Metcalf.
You know what it is? It's I'm so obsessed with you talked me into getting NFL Pro, and I can't tell you like look, I watch college football every now and then, but most of my Saturdays I'm just like going through kind of watching NFL Pro because you can just auto set it and you can just see all the different plays, and I absolutely love that. But I feel like Michael Wilson, there was a few other opportunities in that game where he could have had a big game. So, sum up kind of who. So I like AJ Barner, Bobo. I'm with you. Kind of really sneaky plays that maybe get us to a different build where it's like it forces some type of weird captain. But what do we do with JSN and Tyler Lockett? Tyler Lockett, I've been under on forever, but I've been a few of those games, Ruby. I'm like sweating because I'm like, I see him, they're throwing him the ball, and it's like, oh my gosh, he's going to get one of these like crossing routes deep, for a touchdown from Gino. So like, what do we do with these guys?
I think he's going to be one of the higher owned options today. I mean, he's 5.4K, which I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of Lockett, you're not a fan of Lockett. Like we both have to acknowledge that's a little too cheap for Tyler Lockett.
Let's do this. Let's just bump ownership up manually a little bit on it. Okay. Yeah. Will that impact our build a little bit? Let's just do this.
I also was wrong a little bit real quick. Sorry to preface. I was looking at week 4 routes run. Week 5 routes run. Bobo had 2 routes run. Laviska Shenault actually had 4. Barner still had 7 and stuff. So I still like Barner. But real quick, just to clarify on that, I was looking at week 4 stats, looking at week 5. We can actually get Laviska Shenault up to 1.5 and Bobo back down to 1.6. So sorry about that. I was looking at the wrong week there, but I still love Barner. I think he's still my favorite of that bunch. But yes, I think with Lockett, I think we can leave him where he's at, AP. I think that's a very fair projection, and you're still going to end up with a lot of him if he populates. But I don't really want to force him in there. As far as like Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think this is another guy where like I keep hoping for more. I just do.
So the air yard shares right now, it's very, very close between JSN and Lockett. 23% air yard share for Lockett, 24% for JSN. Basically identical. Target share, looking at every single week, 20% to 15%, 15% being Lockett. No touchdowns yet for Tyler Lockett. I'm just telling you that those crossing routes. And it's like, when you think of defensively who you have to keep eyes on now, you have 2 absolute studs in DK Metcalf and JSN. There's going to be these games where we're all tilted because Tyler Lockett, maybe snags 2, like 57 yards, 60 some yards and 2 random touchdowns. And so like, I don't want to fully discount him because I think that is in the realm of possibilities, even though I think he's the dusty guy out of those 3. I just think, do we just bump them all up a little bit? Like, are you good with that? Or like what? Because we're building this over script. So we know production's going to be there and we want the Sims to naturally kind of, adjust things as we go.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I do think that we have like a decent amount of points allotted to these guys. So yeah, I think that's fine. Fant's the one guy. I just can't do it with Fant. But yeah,
8% like air yard share, under 10% targets. 27 yards a game. We'll bring him down a couple points, points. All right, let's look at real quick the other side. Just isolating it. The one thing is George Kittle. George Kittle's been kind of a machine. We always think of him as kind of boom or bust, but he's been one of the steadier tight ends out there, especially when you look at kind of the under the hood stuff. 22% target share, 16% target share or air yard share. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking at weeks 1, 2, 4, and 5 for this data. I'm taking out the week where everyone was hurt and Juwan Jennings went off, just because I think it's a better look at this sample set of data. 78% routes run on dropbacks too, which is pretty high. We think he's also really good, obviously, in the run game, and he helps out there. But on quarterback dropbacks, he is participating at a 78% route run rate, which is very high, and 3 touchdowns on the season. Which, when you look at those 4 weeks, no one else has a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk, Samuel, 0. Jennings, 0. Jennings obviously had 3 in week 3, but in those weeks he doesn't have any. So, like, what do we do with Kittle? I mean, it's an interesting discussion. Like, we got to bump him up a little bit to fit our script, or like, what are you thinking here?
So that's the leverage play, right? Like, I don't think Kittle comes in at the same ownership as Debo and Ayuk. I think that he is one of the guys who gets squeezed a little bit. And I just think that a lot of people, despite seeing the 12 targets last week, I think a lot of people will still gravitate toward the 2 skill players a little bit more. I'm looking at it, like, when you look at snaps last week, we kind of glossed over Juszczyk a little bit. There's a guy where he's just constantly a factor right now. I know that Kittle's not out or anything like that, but he is effective in the passing game a little bit too. If we wanted to get like a Juszczyk, just a small bump. And can I also rectify like Garendo, if we can get him back down to like 4
wait, what are you seeing? Because I'm seeing two total targets over the last 3 weeks. For
Juszczyk, I mean, he is he was on 20 passing plays, but I don't know how many of those were real routes, but they were still factors. And this is like 18 more chances to catch a pass than Garendo.
I think this is an extremely bullish projection on Kyle Juszczyk.
Really? Because like what?
He has. All right, so he hit it against Minnesota and then against the Jets, but since then nothing. So
he's got 7 catches on the year, though. I know weeks 1 and 2, he also had 8 targets combined. I know that that's injuries and stuff, and Ayuk wasn't a factor. You also had McCaffrey out, but as long as McCaffrey is out, Juszczyk rolls.
In those 2 games, Isaac was not even playing. I think he was in for like 1 or 2 snaps in each game. And now Isaac has been.
That's why I'm also going to remedy this too, AP. I think that we can lower Garendo about a point, back down to 4.9, but keep Juszczyk where he's at. Because I'm looking at some of these stats too. Like, Garendo didn't even have any chance to really catch a pass last week. He's not going to be a factor out of the backfield.
I can't.
Touchdown.
There's not, since I'm controlling this, I can't do it. I can't bump Kyle Juszczyk over what he is. Like, when I saw this, I'm like, that's an insanely high projection for Kyle Juszczyk.
As long as McCaffrey's out, I think that's a very fair one. I know last week he wasn't utilized much, but every other game he's had a catch, and
you look at one of them.
A factor around the goal line a little bit.
So this will be telling. How many times has Debo 5 rush attempts last 2 games? Because that's again kind of why. Like, I wonder if something's still up with that hamstring.
30 routes and only 3 targets for Devo, and only 1 carry, or was it 1 or 2 carries? That's not great underlying things for Devo too. Like, let's slightly sell on Devo. Let's buy in on Ayuk. Let's buy in on Kittle.
We're you know what, we're getting different. Everyone's playing the same crap. We're selling hard on Debo. We're buying hard on Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk looked awesome
too. Like, Debo doesn't look right, and like his stats don't look right either. He's not doing too well on the football field over the last couple of weeks. I like your take there. I want to.
Dude, Juwan Jennings, I know the role is a lot different now that they're all healthy, but this dude, he just looks so good. The rapport that he has right now with Brock Purdy, I feel like he can't be owned, and I would rather have a bullish stance on him. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, he had more targets than Devo last week. I mean, and he looked good.
All right, that's a stand that we're taking right there. We're getting, because everyone's going to love Deebo Samuel. They're going to talk about the zone scheme that Seattle run. Dude, this is a different coaching staff. It's way different. They have a lot of different injuries. They're going to do whatever works. And I feel like the field is going to be way too bullish on Deebo. So that's going to be one stand that we take that I really like. Now that we've done that, Debo probably goes off, so adjust accordingly. But I kind of like that stand. Are you good? Are you? Should we bring up the kickers and defenses?
Let's get 1 second. Let me look at just one thing. So I see Patrick Taylor's name down there. I just want to make sure that sometimes we just leave guys in there.
I know we did. This filter. We got the kick. When I was trying to look at the kickers, they weren't pulling up because there's probably not a projection.
Oh, perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and get these kickers back then.
And we
I know Moody. So this is a good one today. And the reason why the 49ers lost that game is because Moody was hurt. Jake Moody being hurt is actually kind of like one of those things where obviously they got a kicker now. And it's Matthew Wright. So that's the guy. Didn't he kick for the Lions last year a little bit? Yep. Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Kansas City, and Carolina. Okay. So Matthew Wright, 4,600. And then you have, obviously, Jason Myers. So I'm okay. The problem is with Matthew Wright here, AP, is that we're not going to get any of them in the Sims. And the reason is his ownership is not uploaded into the thing. So when you run contest Sims with a person without an ownership, you're not going to see them in the Sims. And that's why doing this 8 hours in advance is always a little bit tough, but just for people to know, you're not going to see any Matthew Wright once we run the Sims.
All right, good. Yeah, so me bumping him up doesn't do anything. I just sent Saber a message.
Oh, so they'll be on it for sure too. Yeah. It's just worthwhile. Like, you always want to build the hour before when you're using Saber. We love to do this show. We'll probably, an hour up to lock. I know AP, you're going to be making your adjustments. Those ownerships are going to change, and the Sims drastically change with it.
So we can be kind of quick on this part. We know we've established the pricing is really low. I don't want to fully discount and dismiss defenses and kickers. I just went up slightly because I don't want to take away the chance of like a pick six, a fumble, scoop and score. Those type of things happen. And at the projection that we had relative to everything else, even an overscript, defenses can sometimes be viable. And actually, if you are playing an over, you want a defensive score, a defensive touchdown. It's obviously a very, very good thing for an over script just because it creates more opportunities. So there are random scenarios and situations where defenses can be viable even in that overs script. So I gave him a slight bump. Are you good with that? Anything else that I should do there?
Yeah, no, I think that's very fine. And I do think, I think someone mentioned it. I think it was Deeks mentioned getting kickers and defenses right now on this slate alone is very difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be telling. Let's run this. I brought down the min price. Running these things, it's gone pretty quickly, right?
Oh, very quickly.
With the updated one.
It'll be done by the time I finish this sentence, as long as I keep talking and end it at a perfect time. Maybe it'll finish up by then. No, it's not going to.
They brought my slider back. I always like this before because you never know. Like you don't know how far the process is along. So I like that they brought this back.
That's the craziest part is I feel like it's slower now with the bar.
With the thing back. Yeah, I know. I do too. You're right. They should go back to what it was because it was really quick.
It's like that placebo where like airports, if you get to the baggage claim too quickly, you have a less enjoyable time. So they made the walks about 10 minutes long instead of 2 minutes long. So that way people think it's not long of a wait for their baggage.
All right. So the contest sim that I use, we're gonna look at the 500K up top. We care about the money. We want to know what is going to win everything tonight. We're running that contest sim right now. Let's switch this. Once it's done, I'll switch to 150 lineups. Do you think this is slower or faster? Running the contest sim part.
I think the contest sims take longer than the building the lineups part, especially nowadays. Like if you reserve and then upload, the contest sims might be simming like 10 times, or 10 contests and minimum. So it is kind of fun to kind of look at. All right, IU captain, nice.
We're getting a very wide captain pool, which I don't hate. I don't hate that at all because in our overscript, there's a lot of different ways that you could be captain off them. Like I don't mind Geno being up there. Brandon Ayuk's our second. I think we both thought that he would kind of be our highest captain at that projection, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
So what's your thoughts here?
Captains are interesting too, because Purdy populates at 9%. Geno Smith populates the most. Geno has
how much freaking use check are we getting? This projection is insane.
None. We're not getting enough.
Oh, that's plenty. 6%. That is there's no need to have more than 6%.
He's catching a touchdown yes now. He's gonna walk into the end zone on a little fullback.
I do think, like, I was kind of thinking in my mind, if I had 8 to 10% Isaac and like 3 to 6% use check, I would feel fine. And it's, kind of in line with that. I don't hate it. I like these builds though, because if you think about an overscript, Mason, maybe he runs for 100, gets in the box once or twice. And then, the Purdy, maybe you actually need like a Purdy dump off to Mason, which we haven't seen a lot of, for this to really make sense, but it could happen. And then, obviously the connection here from Geno. So some of these builds, the 5-1s are going to be kind of interesting and wild, but they're past to where it could make sense.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of didn't hate that Purdy one without one of his top 3 weapons. Is kind of wild, you'd think on paper, but yeah, I mean, Juszczyk has been a factor in the past game. You would need a dump off like Mason to potentially make that work. I think it's also worth noting too, like, I don't know, from the eye test, whenever you see 49ers games, I actually don't know what he's been averaging on the ground. But Purdy has been more of a runner than I think most people give him credit for. Yeah, he has 33 rushing yards last week, 41 2 weeks ago. Like, there's passes where Purdy can get there on the ground. It's not like he's immobile or anything like that. He's actually a really good rusher of the football. And if you're able to kind of get those extra 2-3 points on the ground, like, that matters a whole lot. I do like these double quarterback builds. And yeah, I think Deegs, you make a good point, is like the field's going to be doing that. Like, it might be worth seeing if we have more of a mid-tier build, because right now what you saw, AP, at the beginning of the show, like, we were getting guys at 3-4K range and stuff. And here we're getting a lot of punts outside that Jawan Jennings captain, which honestly, if you thought Jennings does really well,
I was just about to say, I love this build right here. Maybe it's recency bias seeing what Juju Smith-Schuster did the other night, but we know the rapport that Purdy has with Juwan Jennings. Maybe Debo's issues are, a little bit deeper than we all think, or that they're leading on to the public. We know that the 49ers, what do? They hold their cards really, really tight. They've already let us know that with how they handled the CMC situation and back to week 1. So with Debo, maybe they are handling with kid gloves, just looking at what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. Maybe there is still that opportunity for Juwan Jennings, especially in that overscript. It kind of fits the mold, but I almost kind of see like a 49ers trailing script here for this to pan out, or that back and forth type of environment. But I don't think Juwan Jennings is going to get a lot of ownership in the captain spot. So I think from a uniqueness standpoint that this build is highly interesting.
Jennings ran 23 routes last game. Yes, it was not up there with Debo and Kittle, who both ran over 30, and so did Ayuk, 34. But it was slightly down at the same time, 4K. What you're doing is you're trying to take stabs. It's kind of interesting. I mean,
these builds are, if Juwan Jennings has a game, these builds are going to be at the top, and they're going to absolutely nut. Now, there's a lot of risk with it too, because the workload did drop significantly, but back to what Deegs was saying, everyone else is on the same path. I don't see a lot of people being on like a Juwan Jennings captain path. I think that's going to be, one, you could end up last, but two, if he gets a few deep shots, which we've seen time and time again, and he takes them in, I mean, you're going to be very different. I also like Ayuk at captain as well.
The one thing with cheap captain is like it kind of funnels toward the same build a lot of the time. And so when you're using all the salary with it, it becomes a little bit of a like, oh man, everyone's going to have this. Like, where can you get different? That one that you showed was 49,800. But if you want like less dupes, I'm wondering like what change we can make for that. AP, can you hit the ROI button sort wise at the top right there? Go to contest sims real quick, and then flagship MME. I want you to sort it by ROI on that one. I think this is going to change our results a little bit. I could be wrong. Yeah, so I think it wasn't doing the flagship contest originally. So now we get Ayuk at the top.
Okay.
So Ayuk, Walker, Kittle, because I saw one of those had a negative ROI. Walker with 4 of those guys. I think it's going to have a lot of Garendo too, because we bumped him up. You look at your captains. We are very still spread out. I think this is a very good captain spread. We're getting a lot less Geno captain, of course, too. I mean, that's type of builds where not a lot of people are going to get double 49ers running back. I'm trying to convince myself on it. I think it would take a Garindo touchdown, but it absolutely is in play. I'm wondering if we see a build similar to can you like do me a favor? Oh, this one's good. I like this one. I'm not even a huge fan of Fant, but you can talk me into something like this where it's Geno captain, but I think a lot of people would kind of run that too, but it's more mid-range. And you could even get up to 4K if you want, or if you want to lock it and a kicker, you can do that over Jackson Smith and Jigba and Fant. You have a lot of paths with that one, even though it might be a little bit more chalky and stuff. But that's the type of build I can get on board with.
Yeah. Let me just share the little past optimals real quick. So this top section updated for the current data. I mean, last week was a big receiver week. It was not a good running back week. Tight ends actually gained a little bit. 4.2s are still hitting at the highest clip. It continues to blow my mind right here that we have 23% and 5.1s to 27%, 3.3s. When we look at the 49ers, one reason why I do like them is we know where they're going with the ball. We know it's Jordan Mason, Brandon Ayuk. We see a lot of skill position players and 49er skill position players on captain optimals. And over here, somewhat similar. It's a skill position player, dominated by the Seahawks side, Kenny Walker, and Sharp, running back, and then JSN, opposing receiver. So, like, I do feel, while I'm showing this, I do feel confident that a skill position player, not a defense, not a kicker, is going to be captain. And quarterback, though. Quarterback is definitely the one that, could that be our, like, how high owned do you think quarterbacks are going to be this week? Just with, too, when you think of the recent slates that we've seen, I think a lot of people are going to think back to Kirk Cousins and, how low owned he was, and he went off. Does that recency bias kind of elevate quarterback ownership?
Yeah, I think what Cousins was also kind of expensive too. Now that the pricing's down, I expect both these guys to be north of 65%.
22% or 22% projected ownership quarterback captain, right?
Yeah, that checks out too. I think a lot of people are going to naturally be able to do that too, because look, you have a bunch of salary. Both these guys aren't terrible with their legs. I just think a lot of people are going to gravitate toward the quarterbacks. You're going to be super chalky tonight, and for good reason. They're too cheap. Like, so don't get me wrong. If you're trying to, take down first and stuff like that, there is paths where both quarterbacks can be in there. Just expect maybe a little bit more of a chop, or you want to try and get unique without with someone else. Like, you can leave 2,100 in salary. I don't know if I would do it like that lineup that ranked 8th there with Seahawks defense 5-1. That one's incredible. I will say that 8th ranked lineup. But yeah, I want to go through as many of these lineups as we can, just because. Look at that one. Look at that
one. Then Deegs is going to have to continue to remove from the scripts.
Yeah, I like the one that leaves 1,400.
Sorry, Deegs.
Right? I mentioned how like Juwan Jennings and keeper captains lead to the same build, but like that one, you get Geno Smith, the pass catcher. You'd be hoping that maybe he gets like those running backs kind of underwhelm a bit, but like you literally have all the other weapons on San Francisco, and I don't know. I really like how that one is structured. It would take a Jennings touchdown, of course, I think, but there is paths to where I see that winning, and that's always the most important thing.
The other thing that I'm seeing here, maybe this is just how we bumped it up, but it just seems like we're heavy. Well, it's a decent mix, but a lot of it is a decent mix between both teams.
Yeah, I mean,
I was saying that, man, I really want to run 49, like isolate it and really focus on 49er captain builds. But again, very difficult to do when you have a guy like Kenny Walker, DK Metcalf. Both of those guys can break a slate and do enough to be captain viable, as can Kittle, Ayuk, Mason. I mean, captain just has to spread out. So if you run it, I think it also comes down to style of play. If you're running, like if I was running a single entry build, I'd probably go with like a quarterback captain. I don't know. Like, what's your thoughts if you're running single entry versus, MME? Like quarterback captain in this game feels the safest to me.
I think it feels the safest. I don't know if it has the most upside still, but at the same time, like if you're not, I don't know. I think like the ultimate leverage would be like Kenneth Walker captain. What's his ownership in captain looking like?
I was gonna say Kenny Walker and Jordan Mason too might be a little bit safer.
It's higher than Geno too. Like what you would do with that is you'd probably fade Geno if you were going Kenneth Walker captain. And despite us loving Geno and stuff, like I don't know. I think with single entry you can still really leverage the field. And that's what K Fallico is really good at too. Like he'll kind of go against the grain a lot more than going with it. But at the same time, when he does, like if Geno has a subpar game or they score two on the ground with Kenneth Walker, like that's the type of build that can, take you to the promised land. How
unique will double running back be? Because there are a lot of scenarios where, let's just say 49ers, obviously coming off a few losses, but both teams are getting back to the basics and what they do best. Good offensive line, a lot of injuries on the Seattle side. If they run it down their throats, and then on Kenny Walker, we see what he's doing out of the backfield. They get him in space with how dynamic he is. A build like this, leaning on Snyder's guy Isaac, is kind of interesting. And it's no quarterback. Quarterbacks are going to be very, very popular tonight. I think this build is very, very interesting.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how the 49ers approach this game. I do think that losing that game against the Cardinals, I just think they have to come into this one really fired up. I just expect them to take care of business tonight, AP.
The 49ers?
Yep.
Let me just take this off.
The more I think, I'll go ahead and give you my score prediction now since it's almost the end. I'm going to go 49ers, 27, Seahawks, 20. I think that's right on the number, too. I just assume that's the over-under. I didn't even mean to really say that. But, I just think 27-20, and it's a late touchdown by Seattle that gets it close.
Yeah, I mean, God, that total is up there for a Thursday night game.
Yeah,
it's. I'm gonna say 30. I'm gonna say 31-28. 49ers. I think we see offense, and I think it's like. I think a skill position player in the captain. I think my two most important players are going to be Brandon Ayuk and then Kenny Walker probably on the Seahawks side. But look, this is like first look for both of us. That could change as I want to listen to our other shows and other content, get other people's takes too to kind of formulate things and dial in my own stuff. On that note, Rubio, talk to us about the other content today, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, at 2 p.m. today, we will have the Showdown Kings show, which will start at 2. And then at 3:30, you'll have the Print Factory with Big T and JSU. Both those are free for today, and they won't be free next Monday. But, yes, they will be free for today. You also have the article from Snyder up probably a little bit later today. You'll also – or does he do – Thursday night, I think, yes. You'll also have the 3-entry max stuff. You'll have – Big T's player pool. We have a bunch of stuff on the site too, so it should be a good time. Showdown playbook coming up. You already have the pass optimals. Lots of content up for the slate tonight.
And Rubio out next week. No, you're still here Monday, right?
Yes. So that's right. I only got one more
Monday, and then you're out honeymoon trip, right? Honeymoon trip. Is that what it?
Yeah, like almost like that pre.
You won from DraftKings, right?
Yes, the vacation that I won from DraftKings, which will have me on a cruise, happens on the 16th, and I'll be back the 26th or 27th. I can't really remember. But yeah, it should be a good time.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. We'll get man going or someone else. I'll get someone else on here, so we'll have another person help break down those slates. But for Rubio, I'm AP. Good luck tonight and all of your contests, and as always, run pure.